I am an only child, and when I was young, everybody thought I was a spoiled brat, as I threw terrible tantrums if I didn't get my own way. And maybe I was, but it was more than that. When I started school, I refused to sit down and call the nun a bitch for trying to force me. My mother was called and I was sent home till I learnt manners. When asked why I wouldn't sit down, I couldn't verbalise it. But it's not that I wanted to run around. It was that I wouldn't be told I had to sit down. The word pathological conjures up negative connotations, like pathological liar or pathological killer. But it actually just means abnormal, and not necessarily always something dangerous or psychotic. Pathological demand and avoidance, or PDA, is a profile within the autism spectrum. A profile means a group of people who share the same traits, some of which do not fit with the classic definition of a diagnosis. It is a fairly new profile that has emerged, and we are still learning about it. Sensory overload is a big shared trait in all on the spectrum, but people with PDA have different triggers and thresholds. In PDA, it may not be the things that happen that causes the overload, but the delivery of the request to do something, the time frame, or even the expectation. So to give an example, getting up and getting ready may not be overload to someone with a PDA profile, but having someone prompt them, tell them, or rush them is. In many people with ASD, without PDA, prompting may help, but if you have PDA, it's the opposite. When you have PDA, you are constantly in a stressful state and are highly strung. You always feel like you are rushing and don't have enough time if you have a deadline or appointment. Even knowing that there are chores to do can cause stress. Imagine going through your day performing necessary tasks, feeling like there's a gun pointing at your head to make you do them. That's what it feels like. As a child, it will be likely that it is an adult demanding that you do these things. But as an adult yourself, the fact you know these things have to be done, it's really your own mind that's holding the metaphorical gun. If you don't understand why you are the way you are, you probably will hate on yourself for being lazy, a procrastinator, or not as productive as you could be, which adds to the unmet expectations and demands you have on yourself. So if you are constantly living like this, it follows that you are going to be anxious. And to try and alleviate the anxiety, you try to avoid what is a trigger. But as everything can be a trigger, that's really hard, the result being an anxiety disorder to boot. People with PDA develop coping mechanisms, and many mask for years before they reach a breaking point. Thousands of daily meltdowns, which can present in outbursts or be more internalised, can eventually lead to withdrawal through deep depression or descending into a false or fantasy reality that can be controlled. Control may have been the masking technique that made life manageable, but certain things in life cannot be controlled, like health, abandonment, or death of a loved one. And this could be the thing that pushes the person over the edge. The coping strategies that someone with PDA uses can make them seem very controlling, obstinate, and even arrogant. They may be highly intelligent, but cannot cope or function in a stressful job or environment. They flourish when left to their own devices and working at their own pace. They are definitely the kind of person you want to call if a situation needs to be taken control of, but they can take it to the extreme if they become fixated on doing something. Children with PDA do not respond well to normal parenting. People with PDA also do not like uncertainty or surprises, as it unbalances their equilibrium of controlling every action. Patience can be an issue too, as delays often unbalance a routine. It isn't just unpleasant activities that cause stress. Even if you really enjoy something, the steps that need to be taken to perhaps make a favourite meal, partake in an activity, or just go somewhere often feel like too much hassle. But you push through your stress and anxiety to get to the good part. It's hard to say no when you have PDA because you are struggling to be normal, social and productive. But when you have agreed and realize you can't cope with the added pressure, you will make excuses to get out of it, instead of being honest, even with yourself, about why you can't. This is far worse before a diagnosis, because you are still in that cycle of self-judgment and denial. I think getting a diagnosis of PDA is really important from a young age because it allows you to understand how your mind operates and your limitations, be able to communicate them to others, and have the confidence to say no if you have to. It won't change the way you think and function, but it can prevent you from reaching a point where it gets out of control, simply by being kind to yourself. If any of this resonates with you, then seek out help. You'll be glad you did.